Hi everyone. So thank you for coming in today. So another edition of our new men's mental health chat. Let's talk, mate. I've got a couple of guests with me today who I'm going to introduce in a little bit. So this month we're looking at father's mental health or dad's mental health, which is quite timely because I believe on the 21st of June it is International Father's Mental Health Day. So my name's Rob. I work in Portsmouth Services for Solent Mind. I'm not actually a father myself, so I'm just going to be facilitating the discussion today.
So, hello everyone. I'm Matt. I founded Dadz Club about 4 or 5 years ago. Dadz Club is a service that supports fathers across Portsmouth and the Isle of Wight.
Hi, my name is Chris Reeves. I serve a member in the Armed Forces of 20 years as a physical training instructor. And in August last year, I founded what's known as Win the Morning, Win the Day, which is a free event, which we get up on a Friday morning. We walk 2 miles down Stokes Bay. We have a little dip in the sea, chat, coffee afterwards. And we've got several venues around the UK and a couple abroad now.
Thank you, guys. I'm interested to hear what your guys' thoughts are on this. Do we think there's enough open and honest discussion around dad's mental health? So I guess an example would be everyone's heard of postnatal depression, but there's not a lot of talk around postpartum depression, and it's not actually realised that a lot of dads, face. I think it's 1 in 10 dads. I think the stats show experience severe depression in those kind of first few months after a child's born.
So I would open with to say, no, I don't think it is being openly discussed enough. You made a good, valid point about how we're all aware of postnatal depression in mothers. And I think what I would say is that as we're starting to understand more about mental health for mothers, and as we are generally opening up more about men's mental health more in general, we are starting to see, well, from our perspective in Dadz Club at least, that those conversations around mental health for fathers are starting to become more common and more commonplace within discussions. There's some great organisations like Pandas and Dads Matters UK, and more recently Dadz Club, who have been shouting these things from the rooftops for a long time now. So we definitely would say that it's a growing voice, but it's not open enough, and not enough healthcare professionals are right from the very beginning asking dads if they're okay.
I think everything Matt said spot on there, and there's a lot of, I'm really interested in what you're doing actually, Matt, and I'd like to speak to you offline after that as well, to be honest with you. But I think one of the things that is not just surrounding dad's mental health, it is mental health in general, is the stigma, and we keep banging the drum about it. It will get better, and it continues to get better all the time with the different opportunities, the different groups that are growing, and the different people recognizing it more, and people having more businesses, more enterprises, setting things up where they actually have set forums, meetings, divisional chats, coaching days where people are not forced to discuss it, but almost are. And then I think because we're doing that more, it's becoming the norm to discuss it. And it's, as we can all, I think we're all roughly around the same age, I don't think our dads would ever have chats like this, or our granddads, and let's hope that our sons or daughters or grandsons or granddaughters, if we have them, are going to be, we'll probably tell them we're having these chats, and they'll be like, what, you had to break a stigma down? We're like, yeah, it was a real thing back then, and a lot of people were affected by it. So for me, it is the stigma of it, and I think you've got the mental health stigma talking about that, but then when you talk about fathers' mental health, I think that's when, for me, it becomes, everyone's like, well, why you're just a dad, it's the mum who's carried the baby. Well, you've got to go through everything else. I think that's the stigma, and it is going to grow, but it's probably a slow process at the time for now.
Matt, where you obviously so Dadz Club, you are working with fathers. Do you find that some of the guys accessing your service, do you find that some of the guys have this kind of thought process where they struggle to accept that that dads have mental health issues? is still this is going to maybe thought as an area that only affects women?
We discussed this a lot, and a bit later on, I'll mention it probably quite a bit during this discussion about toxic masculinity versus positive masculinity, and how I feel that that's potentially the answer to breaking some of that chain. But yeah, we do. Obviously, within Dadz Club, we've built this community, this forum of dads, where we talk about these things a lot, and opening up is rewarded with support. And obviously, mental health doesn't discriminate against age, gender, race. It doesn't matter who you are. We can all suffer it at any point in our time. Actually, we're all quite likely at some point in our time to experience some form of mental health. And obviously, those intrusive thoughts start to creep in for dads. You know, those feelings of inadequacy. Am I going to be good enough? What if something happens to mum and baby? Can we afford a baby? Can I juggle work and family life together? And all those intrusive thoughts can creep in. And a lot of people will dismiss that as being that's okay, that's fine to have those kind of emotions. And sometimes it is. But as we know, and as you know, Rob and Chris, sometimes it's not. And those intrusive thoughts can manifest in ways of feeling inadequate, lack of confidence. Then they start becoming more physical about, lack of sleep, tiredness, headaches, all those kind of things. And so we really try to encourage in Dadz Club that those conversations are norm and they need to be spoken about the very moment that people are having those thoughts and feelings.
So traditionally, there's this image of fathers, being the strong one, the provider, the breadwinner. Do we think that's still causing problems today, where maybe fathers are afraid to kind of show that vulnerability in front of their children, in front of their partners?
As much as we want to sit down and say that the world is, we can be as vulnerable as a lady. A lady can do the same job as a man, which is absolutely true. You can't take away your unconscious bias that's in your brain. Your unconscious bias that's in your brain is this thing that's being taught to you from the age of probably born until you're a young man, to say, you be strong, don't be a girl, don't cry like a girl. And unfortunately, people of our age and our era, as much as we want to say now, this is how we should be now, that's great. But you can't do, it's not a switch. We know that it's okay to talk about your mental fatigue being a dad. We know that, but it still doesn't take away the unconscious bias, the unconscious decisions, the unconscious emotions and feelings that we have, people of our era, in our head on a daily basis, that we should be strong, we should be this, we should be that. Children who are born, my daughter's 3 this month, so the children who are born now, I'm hoping that when they're our age, their unconscious bias is to go, it's okay that man's crying, he's not a girl. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I completely agree 100% with what you just said, Chris. And I think, what we are doing here is we're picking apart, bit by bit, hundreds of years of generational bias. And you're right, we're all guilty of harboring those things. None of us can say that we are completely perfect in how we are, particularly with the current conversations around equality for men and women. We all harbor some of those unconscious biases, as Chris said, and I completely 100% agree with everything that you just said.
I mentioned at the beginning that obviously I'm not a father myself. I'm not particularly in a rush to become a father, but I'm probably guilty of those thoughts as well, because I know that I've struggled with my mental health over the years. There's been periods where I've been unable to work. Thinking about it, look, honestly, I'm probably guilty of some of those thoughts about, maybe I shouldn't have kids, because am I going to be able to provide as a father?
That's a natural doubt, that though, Rob. I wouldn't look, I don't know you massively well, but that's a massive natural feeling. And believe me, no matter how strong you think you are, there's never a right time to have a child, and there's always the doubt, will it be this, will it be that, and so believe me, they're all natural feelings, mate.
Yeah, absolutely. Father of multiple children, and those feelings are natural for all of them. It's a commitment, but actually, be confident in yourself, and nobody has it perfect. Nobody understands how to be the perfect parent. You just have to know that your child, you'll be there present in your child's life, and that your child will grow up knowing that you love them and care for them, and that you have done all that you can. And if you do that, then you're winning.
What do you guys think some of maybe the key mental health challenges that fathers may face in today's world? Thinking about maybe new fathers in particular.
I think for new dads, you know, you're used to if you're a new dad, you're used to the attention just being for you and your partner. You know, it's you and them, and then next thing, everyone's come to see you. I mean, you know, I live down south, I'm from up north, and everyone comes down to see you and seeing you and your partner, and then the next thing, the baby comes along, and you know, it's not about you anymore. It's not about you and your partner. It's just about the baby. And I particularly remember when Lola was born. I really busied myself like with lots of stuff when people were coming down. I remember digging a pond in the garden and stuff like that. And I remember looking back at it, I was talking about it a few weeks ago with a friend, and I was like, wonder why I did that. And I was like, I didn't need a pond. It was just like, it was really hard work. And I was doing a barbecue for everyone, I was doing this. I just wanted to stay busy. It's probably because I didn't want to visit what was actually wrong, that I was having my nose put out of joint. And not that I was jealous of my daughter. I would never be jealous of my daughter. But looking back, it probably was a little bit of need to stay busy, yeah, because, you know, I'm used to be the one out sort of entertaining everyone when my daughter's entertaining them now.
And I think a lot of, for new fathers particularly, is that they before leading up to becoming a dad, they quite often hear all these stories that are put out about being a parent, the sleepless nights and the crying and the feeding and all those kind of things. And there's that, whilst that is true, you know, there's not often the focus on the good, positive sides of being a dad or a parent. And sometimes maybe some of those messages need to be put out a lot more as well. It's interesting what you say, Chris, because that comes up quite a bit in Dadz Club and some of the chats we have with new dads, the whole busying thing. And I always wondered if it was also some form of men sort of nesting in some way, like mums do as well. It's a real change in lifestyle and attitudes and priorities, and life really does completely change, and you cannot prepare for it. No matter, you know, when I became a dad almost 10 years ago now, I thought I was the most woke, prepared dad there was. I went to all the classes, read all the books, you know, I thought I was educated man. Really wasn't. When my daughter arrived, none of that mattered. None of it helped. It literally, instinct kicked in, and you just do what you do for your child.
I think as well as you get that light bulb moment, and I remember I got back here about me and Lola's mum, and Lola got back here about 1 a.m, and like obviously you're in the hospital. And obviously the midwives are doing the like unreal job that they do. And they're like, okay, we're doing these. Okay, you're good to go now. And I remember getting back. We had like obviously a long day in the hospital. We got a McDonald's on the way back about 1 a.m. And we both sat on the floor. And as we sat on the floor, like having a McDonald's with the baby, we're like, oh, what do we do now? We were like,
it's
oh,
that
no.
silence, isn't it?
It's like, and there's that light bulb moment, like, we are now in charge of this life forever. And it was like, oh my God, it was crazy.
Yeah. But you did it. That's what other dads, I think, need to realize, isn't it, Chris? That, you know, you can do it. You absolutely can.
Oh, yeah.
You know, all those fears and trepidations that you come in, those intrusive thoughts are just that. They're intrusive thoughts. And those can be dealt with. And it doesn't have to. If you deal with those early enough, they don't have to affect you as a person and you as a parent.
Do you guys still kind of feel that kind of pressure to be strong 100% of the time?
I took Lola to Peppa Pig World the other week, and like she wanted to go on all these rides, and she's got no fear. Lola, she's got no fear, and every time she wanted to go on a ride, I was like, she might be a bit too small for that, and she was big enough, and she wants to go on this big slide. And I was like, okay. I always try and step up and like show her it's okay, or, you know, be strong, or get her to jump off stuff and stuff like that. And rides as well. I always think there'll be a time when she's older and she wants to go to Thorpe Park or something like that, and I'm like, oh God, you know, I've got to go on whatever it's called, you know what I mean? But I've got to do that now for her, I think, because I don't want her to be scared of anything.
You know, helping them to, you know, be brave and overcome those fears. You know, it's okay to be scared, but sometimes you still do that. You do something scared, you know, and that can be a positive experience, and strength can come from that, I feel. So I can totally relate to those feelings. The lesson there is obviously we're trying to, you know, teach our children, you know, that it's okay to be scared, and that can be a positive emotion to be scared. You know, I think when you asked a question about, do fathers, you know, kind of feel that pressure to be men and to hide that and those emotions again, to me it does come down to toxic masculinity, and that the people's idea around that notion, around the toughness, about men have to be physically strong, you know, emotionally callous, and just behaviorally aggressive, is totally a wrong, harmful notion of men in general and to society. And this notion that men are anti-feminine and can't show any femininity in the way they are, and that somehow demasculates them, you know, and men are fearful of that. They're fearful of people saying that to them, or that the idea that in order to get respect as a man, it has to come through social or financial means, you know, and that's the only way that you can be measured as a man and get that power and respect. And that's why Dadz Club's always been about, actually, you know, that's what defines toxic masculinity. But masculinity can be positive. You can have positive masculinity, which is the antithesis of toxic masculinity. And it's all about, you know, how we champion healthy behaviors and how we use that to positively build up other men, other people, communities, people in general. How can that be healthy? How can it be supportive?
When you talk about toxic masculinity, are you referring to like don't cry, don't be a girl? Do you mean stuff like that?
Yeah, so using that kind of language, very much, in my opinion, falls into toxic masculinity. You know, man up, for instance. You know, I think that can be really harmful to a child. And so I feel, you know, and I'm not a mental health professional. I just go from where we sit at Dadz Club and the conversations that we've had with dads. But I feel that the language we use can sow seeds. And I feel that just by changing language and being open about the fact that what we're feeling, you know, monkey see, monkey do, I feel that spreads a real positive message to children.
I mean, I'm just thinking back to the example I gave earlier from someone like myself who has those doubts. You know, would I be able to provide for a child? You know, what would happen if I had what would happen if I had kids and then I had another mental breakdown a few years down the line?
I think as well, Rob, I think, you know, I'd be more concerned if you wasn't having them thoughts, because, you know, if you go, yeah, I'll be a, no. It's like going, right, I'm going to run a marathon tomorrow. When's the last time you trained? Well, I've done a run about 6 years ago and I've been sound since. You know, it doesn't work like that. So you need to prepare yourself. If you sit there and think this is going to be, you know, a walk in the park, because it's not. Your mind and your brain's a muscle. If you don't train it, if you don't step out your comfort zone, if you don't keep on top of it, if you don't open it, if your mind's like a parachute, if you don't open it, it doesn't work. Like Rob, I'm only quoting what you said. If you're concerned about having a mental relapse, let's call it, if you had a child, then rightly so, you should be thinking them things, but because you're preparing your body for it, and you're preparing your partner for it, and you're preparing yourself for it. So it's not a shock. You know, so you could say, look, I need this time away. I need to go and do X, Y, and Z. This is my coping mechanisms. This is my triggers, X, Y, and Z. Again, I don't know. And you prepare yourself. So I don't think you should alienate yourself for saying them things or thinking them things. I think it's vitally important that you do. You know, that's exactly the same as running a marathon. If you're stood there with nothing on and going to run a marathon, you need to think about what you're going to eat, what your clothes you're going to wear. You know, you're going to listen to music, some good running trainers, some good training programs. And that's all you're doing there, mate. So that keep them thoughts going.
Yeah, that's brilliant advice. I mean, effectively, I mean, I know you used the marathon example there. But then that's the same, what you're saying there is the same in life, isn't it? Really, look after yourself and model those behaviors. You've got to know how to look after yourself, check your mental behavior. If children see you looking after yourself, then they're going to model that behavior themselves in their later lives. I would like to hope that what we're doing and what we are encouraging others to do is the beginning of breaking that chain, so that it is more normal for our children and their children to talk about what they're feeling, to admit that it's okay to be frightened or have feelings around anxiety, depression, avoid all of that so it doesn't become something more sinister. And I think, discussions like this today are really important, and there need to be more of these things happening to set an example. Because I think, again, Chris, as you said earlier on, my dad and his dad would probably be laughing about the fact that I'm sat here having this conversation on a Zoom.
You wouldn't understand.
No, they just really wouldn't. And it's not their fault. That is society and culture at that time. And now we have this opportunity now to have these discussions. And I think they're really healthy, really positive.
How can fathers, provide that kind of positive role model for their children when it comes to speaking openly about mental health, especially for the sons out there? Obviously, we know the male suicide rate is still massively disproportionate to female suicide rate in this country. We know, although it's getting better, there is still that stigma around kind of men speaking openly. So how can fathers be those positive role models?
I would say to go and educate yourself in the language you're using. What language you're using, and talk about the different ways people learn. Kinesthetic, audio, visual. A couple of other ways. Find out how they're learning, and then you can key into their languages and listen to them, become an effective listener. A good coach shouldn't talk much. They should listen and ask open questions and not actually give that much advice. It should be, okay, if you get to there, how would that make you feel? How's it going to look if you get to there? And what are your options? Now, I'm not talking, my daughter's 3 this month, so I'm not going to have them questions anytime soon with her. But these are questions I think about all the time, and I think about how I am with it and how I explain stuff to her now, even at this age. And also on the back of that as well, don't be scared to ask questions like, how's your energy today? How's your emotional energy?
I mean, what Chris has just said was, very much nail on the head. The relationship that you have with your child and the communication. And I love what you said, Chris. I think it's probably one of the most important things was, listen more than you talk. We should be listening to our kids and recognizing that, parenting should be more responsive. We need to model more responsive parenting around our children and acknowledge that our children are communicating all the time, whether that's, verbally or non-verbally. There's always a need there, and how we meet that is really important, and the language that we use when talking to our children. And I love the idea of creating, critical thinkers in amongst our kids, get them to question, get them to understand. It was very powerful what Chris said about, asking a child, no matter how old they are, how are you feeling today? What are you feeling? What's going on there? Have those conversations. Try not to lead anything. Don't ask any leading questions. And I think just to not try to be too perfect. If you're trying too hard, if you're trying to conform, if you're trying to be a perfect parent, chances are you're probably doing yourself, no justice at all. You're making it far harder than it needs to be. If you show that you're human, if you show that you make mistakes, if you talk and acknowledge about what that was, and they see you owning up and owning your own behaviors, and you're able to have those conversations with children, I think it then goes from the point of being an oddity to being normal.
I think one of the things that I've learned over the last few years is not just parenting. I've done some NLP, neuro linguistic programming. Done my diploma a few years ago, and the one sentence they use, and I've just wrote it down about parenting, is they don't say about parenting, but they say about coaching. But I've turned it into parenting. Parenting is a to-do with process, not a to-do-to process. So you don't parent them, you do it with them. You listen and adapt. You know, if you've got, this is my set way, I'm going to parent Lola, you know, she might have another way she wants to go. She might have a learning difficulty. She might not be a kinesthetic learner. She might be an audio learner. She might, you know, and I've then got to adapt. So it's a two-way process. The effective listening when you're talking to the child, and as Matt said, make sure you're listening more than you're talking, and guide them around, you know, but being effective listener is key. Don't just sit there and nod and then think about your next question, and you're not, you know, you need to listen to exactly what they're saying. So it's to do with process, not to do to process.
That can only do to develop children further. I think, you know, it's a real positive mindset to be in, and it produces, you know, critical thinking, confident, resilient children that will hopefully grow into adults who will continue those behaviors, and we can almost in a way break or begin to break that chain of harmful communication and that, you know, just isn't working for whatever reason, whatever it is that's stopping men from talking, whatever it is that's stopping children breaking free from those bonds, and, you know, perpetuating those behaviors, those thoughts, those feelings. Yeah, and that's what we need to be doing. We need to model really good behaviors in ourselves. Monkey see, monkey do. They see it, they do it, and we need to be listening to them, responding to their needs, not our own.
I think, again, so much of this comes down to that open and honest communication. Like so many things in life, we always kind of say in mental health circles, asking for help is not a sign of weakness. You know, maybe talking to another dad or talking to your dad, you know, or seeking advice, you know, if it's not a sign of weakness.
No, it certainly isn't. And effectively, that's what Dadz Club does. It creates that community of like-minded fathers, talk about the highs and the lows. You know, we keep it very realistic about what it's like to be a dad. And I think, you know, that's what it is. It's not just about father to son or father to daughter. It's also father to father. And I think that's really important. I feel that there's some social learning that goes on there between when you bring those kind of communities together, you know, and those fathers who maybe are in need a little bit more support, or a little bit more knowledge. They can, whether they are consciously seeking that or whether they subconsciously receive it, the effect is still the same. It's still positive. They still get that. The quicker we can get in, the earlier we can put in these mechanisms and these thought processes, these mindsets in our young men that enable them to be resilient and check themselves and to have communication with their dads. In previous careers, I've seen too many young male suicides. 5 in fact, and so I shouldn't even know one, but unfortunately in the third sector that's what I've come across. You know, it begs the question, could early intervention have helped those people? And if we can make resilient young adolescent men who are strong enough, hopefully, to ask questions, to comment about what they're feeling, to go to dad and say, this is what I'm feeling, or uncle or granddad or a trusted male role model, then those conversations can hopefully, you know, at least put a dent in those statistics, surely.
Yeah. So I just want to say thank you so much to you guys both for joining us. As usual, I know we could probably kind of go on kind of talking around this topic for a good long time. Unfortunately, we do only have so much time. So thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much for joining us today, guys. I think for me as well, as someone, as I say, who there isn't a dad, and I've not completely ruled out ever having kids, but it's really, I found it really interesting today to hear your thoughts on this. I'm just thinking, just kind of to end things on a bit positive note, if there's, because There's just kind of one thing that both of you would just kind of like to leave, almost as a parting message for, you know, dads who are watching this, or kind of anybody who's maybe watching this who's due to become a father for the first time, has a lot of anxieties around that, or has a lot of worries around that. They're questioning their ability maybe to father children because, you know, they've got things going on in their lives, maybe mental health difficulties.
I think for me, it'd be, you know, to have them feelings of anxiety about what's to come in the future if you're going to be a new dad. That's absolutely, I'd embrace it, if I'm totally honest with you, because you're preparing yourself, you know, for what's ahead, and rightly so. You should feel not worried, but you should feel signs of, you know, you don't know what's to come ahead, and to discuss that openly with your partner about what's to come ahead. I think if you're someone watching this and you are struggling with anything, I think you should be immensely proud of yourself for what you're doing, because what you're doing to start educating yourself by watching videos like this, by looking stuff up on the internet about how to become a better dad or a better mum or a better parent, you know, you're stepping up and you're being involved in something for mental health, breaking the stigma, breaking behaviors, and all that is going to do is going to make a better future for your child. So you should be immensely proud of that if you're watching this today.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't say that any better, to be honest. I think that was absolutely amazing. If you are having those feelings and you are slightly concerned that maybe that they're not just the normal feelings, which everybody feels, please, you know that it's natural to feel those things. But obviously you need to talk to people, and whether that be your partner, midwife, any other healthcare professional, just, you know, if those thoughts aren't going away and it's affecting physical health as well as emotional health, yeah, discuss that, talk about it. It's not weak, it's immensely brave and strong, and you need to be proud of the fact that you were strong enough to have that conversation. There are organisations like Dadz Matter UK, Pandas UK, who are doing some really good work online regarding that. So if anyone is watching, you know, that's a great resource to get some information. And if they just need dad to dad support, then there's not just Dadz Club, there's other groups out there, but we are one of them.
Thank you so much, guys. So we'll kind of wrap that up there today. We'll be back with another episode of Let's Talk Mate next month. Yeah, and I hope people enjoy this. Take care, everyone.